Hello, everyone. Welcome tonight. My name is Glenn Rawson, and I apologize for the Harleys going by outside and for the less than glamorous backdrop of my setting tonight. I'm in Sacramento, California, and staying at the Doubletree here near Old Town. And we left 2 days ago on a tour, the Mormon Battalion and the California Saints. And we came across the desert and up into the Donner Pass. We visited the Donner disaster site and then went on over the hill to Coloma, where gold was discovered in 1846. And then we went up to Tragedy Springs. And wow. Talk about a sacred place when you know the story of what happened up there. Very, very special place. We had a wonderful moment up there. We came back down and we are now here, like I said, in Sacramento. And today we just visited Sacramento. We went around, saw the Railroad Museum and Old Town. Tomorrow we'll be going down to San Francisco, or early on it was called Yerba Buena, where the first Latter-day Saint city in the West was planned and started to be built, where the California Saints first landed with the Brooklyn in 1846. All of that is coming up tomorrow. Then we're going to work our way down south into San Diego when we talk more about the Mormon Battalion. So it's been a wonderful tour, and I've got 9 wonderful people with me in a very small van, very intimate setting, and we're having a ball. They are the best of people, and it's a joy to be with them. So tonight, I have 6 stories, 4 of which brand new, given to me by people listening from the audience, and I hope you enjoy those stories. Very, very touching, powerful stories. I just wanted to make mention to you that and again, you understand that I don't make any money doing these firesides. This is not how I make a living. And I still have to make a living. In fact, more so now than ever. I make a living by my tours, and I make a living by the books that you buy. So please don't be upset with me if I make mention of the fact that in September of 2026, one of the most exciting tours I've ever done. I'm so looking forward to it. I've wanted to do it for years. And in commemoration with America 250, I'm doing an American history tour, Boston down to Jamestown, along the Atlantic seaboard, the sites of the American founding. I've always wanted to do this. And finally, Fun for Less has given me the chance, and it will go in September of 2026. If you'd like to go, there's 2 ways now you can get information on that tour if you'd like to go. The first one is you can go to funforlesstours.com on the website, or you can just call them, 801-619-1022. Give them a call if you'd like to go. The second thing that I'd like to mention is the Year 6 book collection is almost here. You know that every week, my team sends out one of my stories with the written copy and a video. It's just meant to be a weekly pick-me-up, an inspirational true story. It's just a public service that we do. And they send those out every week to more than 25,000 subscribers around the world. But we take all those stories, 52 of them, send out, and we compile them into a book. That book of 52 inspirational stories is soon to be released, probably around in August. If you'd like a copy of that book, why, go to glennrawsonstories.com and the book is available there. Or just send me a text. I'll get you on the waiting list. Okay, guys, may I ask, as I always do, for your prayers. It would be my desire, if the Lord were willing, to have these stories go around the world. They're your stories, they're true stories, and I wish everyone could hear them. First story. This is a kind of an unusual story. And it comes in, I guess it's kind of like a last vestige of Pioneer Day, maybe to dispel some myths and set the record straight. This story comes in honor and remembrance of the experiences of our pioneer ancestors and just what was it really like to come to Utah or the Rocky Mountains. March 16th, 1860, a small group of Latter-day Saint immigrants left Bern, Switzerland, down the Rhine River on to Liverpool, where they boarded a ship, the Underwriter, set sail for America. They journeyed to New York City, and then from there, by rail to Florence, Nebraska, where they outfitted and set out across the plains to Salt Lake City. The 36-wagon company arrived in September 1860. Sometime after the company's arrival, Ulrich Loosle wrote a letter back to his family and his friends in Switzerland, and it's a portion of that letter published in church newspapers that I want to share with you. He wrote, "Dear beloved mother, brothers and sisters in the Lord Jesus Christ, once again, I take my pen to write to you to give you further information concerning my travels over the plains of America, concerning which you hear so much of in Europe, also the hardships and inconveniences of the travelers. So I thought I would write some of my own experiences as I found them. It is 1,030 English miles from Florence, Nebraska to Salt Lake City. I had a real good wagon, 3 yokes of oxen, 2 cows, and 1 calf, which I bought in Florence. As a rule, we traveled 15 to 20 miles a day. Everything was done in order. Many people in Switzerland think this kind of travel is hard, but I can truthfully tell you that the last 20 years, I worked harder than I did on this journey, even though I was the leader of the company and had more to do than the rest. We had good times, spending our evenings in songs and speeches and in encouraging entertainment of all kinds. On September 2nd, 1860, a Sunday, 4 apostles came to our camp and preached to us. On the 3rd, we entered Salt Lake City. The same day, Brigham Young came to our camp to give any advice we wanted. Let us take one more glance back over our trip, he said. I have wondered at the success of our journey, for we were always so happy and blessed. Everything went well and successful. We sang and prayed together like the children of a family." End of quote. So much for every pioneer company suffering, starving, sacrificing, and dying. It wasn't always like that. Some people had a downright easy, relatively easy, successful trip. And then Ulrich goes on in the letter to give this description of life in the Salt Lake Valley. I found this most intriguing. This is what he said. Salt Lake City is larger and more beautiful than I thought it was. I think it's about, get this, I think it's about 1/2 hour broad and 1/2 hour long, meaning a half hour to walk side to side, end to end. I think things have changed a wee bit since Ulrich looked over the city. Continuing, there are quite a few houses and several manufacturing establishments when one can buy anything necessary to live on. There was lots of grain and good large potatoes raised this year. I've heard nothing about sickness. I've been inquiring about the fruitfulness of the land, and this week I heard from an Englishman that he sowed 1.5 bushels of wheat and harvested 75 bushels, each bushel weighing 60 pounds. I have inquired many times of English and Americans about different things, and they've always been very kind and courteous to me. They have invited me to their homes and meetings and have helped me in any way possible. The food and drink the people have here is as good as any gentleman has in Switzerland. The land is very easy to work and the harvests are good. I've seen brethren here who came 4 to 6 years ago without money or a wagon or oxen, and some of them in debt. And now they possess a farm, house, cows, oxen, horses, mules, pigs, and a number of chickens and ducks, and all paid for. The people, he said, have plenty to eat and live like lords. The Latter-day Saints are not going to Zion to find riches and be selfish, but instead to be blessed by the God of Israel with the riches and that nature affords, the fresh mountain air and pure water that flows through the land. And get this, I don't wish myself back in Switzerland for one moment, because I feel happy and thank God that he has led me here. Not until now did I realize how poor, he said, the Swiss people were, and how nice they could have it if they would obey the call of the servants of God and keep the commandments of the Lord. End of quote. Talk about a change of perspective. That's the life and experience of one pioneer. And to my way of thinking, there is no better witness of the truth of history than an eyewitness in his own words. Ulrich Loosle. Next story. And again, I'm indebted to the Cheneys for this story. October 29th, 1968, Provo, Utah. GeNeil Cheney was at home with her 2 children, while her husband, Lowell, was in school at BYU. They lived in a trailer home just off Columbia Lane. As with so many other students, they were struggling to make ends meet and get the education they would need for their future. It was a normal day. Clothes were drying on the line outside while Mom was making bread inside. She noticed a propane truck pulled up and began filling the tank for the trailer house next door. Suddenly, she said, there was a loud bang, followed by the hissing sound of escaping gas. In moments, a big white cloud of gas hung over the truck and the 2 trailer homes. She watched, horrified, as the truck driver tried to shut off the gas. And then the gas exploded, enveloping the truck and both homes, inside and out, evidently. Thinking of her little ones, GeNeil ran through the demolished home in flames and gathered up her 2 children. She ran out into the yard, but could not get through the gate of the 4-foot fence. She said it was at this time that another heavy cloud of propane exploded, searing us with a wave of heat that felt as if it were penetrating to the bone. I saw, she said, the gray fence in front of me become seared and blackened as we were burned. Now, if you remember, propane burns in open air at about 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. GeNeil turned and ran toward the back fence, passing her clothesline. As she did so, she noticed the clothes tattered and burning on the line. They were just rags. She reached the back fence. The truck driver was there on the other side. He lifted her 2 children over the fence, and while she clambered over the fence, she ran out into an open field with her children, looked back, and described the scene this way. It was so surreal. The propane truck had flames shooting 30 to 40 feet high into the air as gas escaped from the tank and the pressure was released. Both trailers were engulfed in flames, as well as our car. She would later testify. Do I see the Lord's protecting hand in all of this? Yes. My testimony of his love and care is sure, she said. I know it was the Lord's guiding hand that helped me grab my babies and escape. As I've gained experiences in this life and look back on the happenings of that day, I have thanked my Heavenly Father many times for his guidance, love, protection, and healing power. So many things could have been different. Yes, we were burned, seriously, but we were alive. End of quote. Lowell and GeNeil went on to have 3 more children, 24 grandchildren, and 17 great-grandchildren. A family that would not have been without the tender mercies of the Almighty. Oh, and one more thing. The Lord is the master of making good things come of disaster. The ensuing insurance settlement gave the 2 of them the resources they needed to get started in dental school. Thank you, Cheneys, for that story. The year was 1929, and of course, that was the Great Depression. Jonathon Nephi Hunt was a farmer living in rural Idaho and raising a family. One of his sons was serving as a missionary in the southern states, and in addition to supporting the family, $50 had to be raised each month to meet the missionary's needs. That's a lot of money in 1929. Times were hard. No one had any money. When the banks failed, they took everyone's savings, including the Hunts, but they still had the farm. At least they would have enough to eat, they say. Well, it came to the end of the year, and tithing settlement was coming up in a few days. The check was also coming due at the bank to take care of the missionary. They had enough cash reserves to do one or the other, but not both. One day, a conversation took place between Jonathon Hunt, who was at that time serving as bishop of the Buell, Idaho ward, and a member of the stake presidency. It was witnessed and recorded by Bishop Hunt's daughter, Golda. She wrote, quote, "I overheard them talking as I was getting school lessons, and I don't think they were aware that there was anyone else in the room. Father told him the situation, that he had a missionary son out in the field, and let me quote that again. Father told him the situation, that he had a missionary son out in the field, as he was aware. He proceeded to tell him that it was time for him to send the missionary money, as well as the tithing settlement was in a few days. He told him he had enough money to do one or the other. He asked the brother what he would do if he were him. The good brother, the member of the stake presidency, thought for a moment and then said, "Well, Bishop, I'm sure the Lord is aware that you have a son in the mission field, and I'm sure he expects you to keep him there. So I'm sure he would understand that you must send him the money." Golda said, "My father didn't say anything for several seconds." And the brother said, "Well, I can see that you've already made up your mind. Just what are you going to do?" And father said, "Well, there isn't any question as to what I must do. The money belongs to the Lord. It's not mine to do with. I'll pay my tithing, and somehow the Lord will open up the way." End of quote. Well, the other man, the member of the stake presidency, tried to change his mind in his decision, but as Golda phrased it, my father didn't falter for a moment. He knew what he must do, and he would do it. End of quote. Well, days passed. Tithing settlement was nigh. Then, mysteriously, a man came into their place and asked if he could buy a cow. Now, you have to understand, everyone in that area at that time evidently had cows for sale. They were everywhere, and every farmer would gladly have sold them to have the money to survive. But this man passed every farm with cows in plain view and went all the way to the end of the road to the Hunt place and asked to buy his cow. And not just any cow. He asked to buy that white cow standing out there in the field. And he offered Bishop Hunt $150 for that animal. Now, this is at a time when you could buy a cow, a good cow, for as little as $15. Well, Bishop Hunt didn't want to take advantage of the man. So flabbergasted, he explained that cows didn't bring that kind of money. But the man insisted that he wanted that cow at that price. Goldus said, quote, "Well, when Father was convinced that the man was aware of the situation, of course, he would sell her," end of quote. The deal was closed, and the man left with his very valuable cow. After he was gone, Bishop Hunt realized that, uncharacteristic of him, he hadn't even asked the man's name. He came in the house, commented to his wife how strange the whole thing seemed. It troubled him enough that he went to his neighbors and asked if they had seen the man. No one had. And that if he had come into their place with such an offer, they would have never let him leave. No one saw the man come nor leave. That in itself was a miracle because, as Bishop Hunt's daughter said, in those days, of very few cars, when anyone did come into the valley, everyone knew it and saw them. Of her father, Goldus said, "Such dauntless faith." Indeed. And the Lord smiles down on it. I want to be more like that. Let's take a break. Guys, coming up this fall, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of being out on the Pioneer Trail. Maybe you've gone on trek, but this is not the same. This is not the same. Dennis and I are going to take a group across the Pioneer Trail from Nauvoo into Salt Lake City. Now, no, we're not going to pull handcarts. And no, we're not going to go four-wheeling in a 50-foot bus. No, none of that. We will take our luxury bus and stay as close to the trail as we can. But we will be telling the stories and sharing the history of the Pioneer Trail. If you've ever wanted to know it and to feel it, this short, inexpensive tour is available for those of you that would really like to know what happened out there, to go stand in the ruts where your pioneer ancestors once trod. If you're interested in going, you don't have to, but if you're interested, call Dennis at 801-541-9760. That's this September 2025. And again, we have another book coming out, the one that you've been hearing about on Facebook and on these firesides. It's called Prayer Brings Miracles. It's a story collection about your experiences with prayer. True stories of how prayer has brought miracles into people's lives. It is a powerful book. It's taken me a long time to edit and select just the right stories. I didn't put them all in, I couldn't. But there's a number of stories there that I think you will find most inspiring, most instructive, and useful. If you'd like a copy of that book, it's not out yet, but you can pre-order it at glenrossenstories.com. Okay? And lastly, a thank you to all those of you who are VIPs. The VIPs are those people who, at their own personal sacrifice, contribute about anywhere from $45 to $60 a year to be VIPs. They support and help this publishing work. It's thanks to them that we're able to reach a worldwide audience and the millions that we have. So thank you to all those of you that are VIPs. And if any of you would like to help, would like to contribute, you're welcome to. You can go to glennrawsonstories.com. You don't have to, but it would be much appreciated if you did. Thank you. And lastly, before I continue, 4 of the stories here tonight, well, actually more than that, 6 of these stories, all 6 of them, were contributed by viewers and listeners like you. So if there's an inspiring story in your family, in your history, or even your own experience that's true and concise and written down, send it to me. I'd love to share it. Next story. It was June 5th, 1838, that the Alfred Bosworth Child family was baptized in St. Lawrence County, New York. George Blakely was the elder who taught and baptized the family. On August 11th of that year, the family began the journey to gather with the saints in Kirtland, Ohio. It was on that journey, while traveling through the heavy forests of eastern Ohio, that the following experience occurred. The Child's family was in the lead wagon of the caravan. 2 other families were following behind. The canvas wagon sides were rolled up, and all the family was at that moment riding in the wagon, enjoying the sights and sounds as they rolled along. Suddenly, a voice was heard. "Whoa!" Alfred, who was sitting in the front, looked around, but no one was in the vicinity. The Child's team stopped so abruptly that the team following kind of bumped into the Child's wagon. Then, according to one of the children, Warren Gould Child, who was there, he said, quote, "A personage walked unconcernedly up to the wagon. He had the appearance of being very aged, well-dressed, with an unusual long white beard, tidy in his appearance from head to foot, apparently about 6 feet tall and of rather spare build, carrying a very pleasant and happy look on his face. He asked no questions as to who we were or where we were going, but proceeded to shake hands with the family, commencing with father first, then mother, and each of the children according to age, blessing them in the name of Jesus Christ. The writer, Alfred, being the next to youngest in the family at that time. After getting through in this manner, Alfred said, he turned to me the second time and pronounced a further blessing. Placed his hands on my bare head, and after finishing, without further words, he slowly passed on. The visit was so sudden and unlooked for that not a word was spoken by the family. Father expected he would do likewise with the families occupying the 2 wagons behind us, but he simply made a slight bow as he passed them. Some of the families got out to hail him and get a further explanation of so strange an unlooked for occurrence. They went quickly to the rear, and to their surprise, he was nowhere to be seen. They made a hasty search in every direction, but he was nowhere to be found. Search in every direction was made in the road for his tracks, but none were to be found anywhere. The families traveling with us remarked that we had received a very strange blessing from a stranger. On arriving in Kirtland, Father related the occurrence to the prophet Joseph Smith, who told him that the personage was none other than one of the Nephites who were permitted not to taste death, and that they made occasional visits where they were permitted. End of quote. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. Another story I received just this week. July 22nd, 1927. It was a hot and sultry day in Star Valley, Wyoming. Tippetts' family lived on a farm just 2 miles south of Afton. Mother Bessie describes that on that day, she was in her home, quote, ironing clothes, heating her iron on the kitchen stove with her back only about 18 inches from the stove. Can you picture one of those old stoves? Meanwhile, some of the men of the family were out in the front yard outside the house working. And then Bessie noticed that one small cloud in the sky. She heard a faint clap of thunder, and a few drops of rain fell. A sunshine shower, she called it, came for a few moments. Then, as she was looking out the window, watching the men work, without warning, there came a clear voice say to her very plainly, "Go, watch him." It wasn't a soft voice, Bessie said, nor a loud one, but a firm and emphatic statement, prompting of the Holy Ghost, I'm sure. End quote. Obediently, Mother Bessie walked outside and sat down on a block of wood to watch with her back to the house. Bessie would describe the rest of her life, what happened next. Then came a terrible crash of thunder and lightning simultaneously. My husband and I got such a wallop on our heads from the shock that it dazed me for a few seconds. Claude was facing the house and saw the lightning strike the brick chimney. He yelled, "Come on!" and ran. I shook my head and staggered after him. The room was filled with dust and smoke, and I could barely see across it. There slumped our baby girl, Mary, with her head bent down on her unconscious, naked body. Her hair, eyelashes, and eyebrows were burned to a crisp. She looked as if she were dead. Her little dress was riddled, hanging on her arms by the short sleeves, and bloomers were completely riddled too, hanging on only by the elastic above her knees. Both garments, she said, looked as if a dozen mice had been gnawing them for days. I was almost crazed with anxiety, she said, and I picked her up and ran outside, thinking if she got some air, she might still be alive and would revive. All this time I was praying, "Dear Lord, save my baby," repeating this over and over and over again. End of quote. Well, the doctor came immediately and treated Mary's injuries. It didn't look good. Mary was completely unresponsive. The force and devastation of that lightning strike was astonishing. It struck the brick chimney, went down, grounded under the stove in the cabin, dug a 5-foot deep hole under the house, and splintered a double floorboard 3.5 feet in length. That floorboard, exactly where Mother Bessie had been standing only moments before. In addition, besides destroying the brick chimney, the lightning flattened the stovepipe elbow and 2 lengths of stovepipe as flat as if they had been straightened by a big hammer. It broke every pane of glass in the 2 big windows and killed my houseplants in both windows, she said. We had a metal bed in the northeast corner of the room with 2 pillows on the east end. The force blew 4 big holes 1.5 inches wide in the corner of the house where the logs were joined together. It took the north half of the pillow and blew the feathers through these holes and out onto the grass. Mary, who had been laid down for a nap only moments before the strike, had evidently gotten up and was standing nearby when the lightning struck. The force of the strike blew the back half of her right shoe cleanly away, along with the buttons on the front of the shoe. Well, after the doctors finished, Mary's father and uncle gave her a wonderful priesthood blessing. Mother Bessie Gom Tippetts said, quote, "There was a rich outpouring of the Spirit of the Lord, and a blessed, warm assurance filled the room, and we all knew she would live and be all right." She said there were only 4 of us in the room, end of quote. 14 hours later, at 6 the next morning, after an all-night vigil by her parents, Mary opened up her eyes, looked up at her mother, and said, "Mommy's a wackle," meaning mommy's a rascal. Mary recovered. She went on to marry and raise a family of 10 children in the faith. Now, brothers and sisters, this story is a true and cherished family experience in the Tippetts family. Mother Bessie Gom Tippetts shared that story all the days of her life with her children and grandchildren to help them gain a strong, I'm quoting, gain a strong and lasting faith and testimony of the gospel and the power of the priesthood, end of quote. And evidently her dedication to that experience has worked. Almost 100 years later, the family shared that story with me. It is still precious to them. Another story given to me this week. John Styler, S-T-Y-L-E-R, John Styler was born in Switzerland in 1855. He immigrated to Utah along with his mother and grandparents when he was 5 years old. He married Elmira Black on December 28, 1882, and a month later was called to serve as a missionary in the Southern States Mission. Now, his mission in that day was full of hardship and persecution, even so much that he witnessed 2 of his friends and fellow elders shot and killed. Elder William S. Berry and Elder John H. Gibbs, shot and killed by a mob August 10th, 1884. Well, upon completion of his mission, John returned home and took up farming while he and Elmira raised a family. John was called as the bishop of the Oasis Utah ward, where he would serve for 19 years. Now, in time, their son, John Valentine Styler, or JV for short, was called to serve as a missionary. Where? The Southern States Mission, same mission as Dad. JV left his wife and family and answered the call. As before, the Southern States was still a dangerous mission. Family records share the following. Quote, "One day, JV and his companions were speaking at a church meeting in a little white schoolhouse. Outside, a group of men were drinking and cursing and threatening the Mormons. One of the men, brandishing a rifle, shot at the wall of the schoolhouse. All went quiet as Elder Styler felt a sting in his arm. He lowered his left arm and felt something tumbling down his sleeve. He shook gently the arm, and the lead slug rolled into his hand." End of quote. You imagine? They looked closer. The bullet had come through the wall, his overcoat and white shirt, and stopped at his garments. JV kept that lead slug as a memento for years, showing it to his grandchildren. Now that's remarkable enough, but the story doesn't end there. Many years later, the Delta Utah Middle School was putting on a play. They needed costuming to fit the time period of the play. One of the costumes required for the play was a nice wool coat, dated early 1900s. One of the teachers found a coat, brought it in, saying that it had been donated by a prominent local family who couldn't remember exactly how they came to have that coat. Now, as it turned out, two of JV's grandsons worked at that same middle school. And according to the account, quote, "We were all admiring the coat when someone said, 'It's too bad about that hole in the upper arm.' And sure enough, there was a patched hole in the upper left arm." The two grandsons of JV looked at each other, remembering the story of their grandfather. It couldn't be. The teacher who brought the coat examined it more closely and found the following. In the inside pocket, she discovered a sewn-in name tag with this inscription: John Styler, December 10th, 1914. Everyone was amazed. The coat was gifted to the Styler family, who, quote, "value it as a treasured sign of tender mercies," end of quote. My dear friends, we live in a world filled with the tender mercies of God, and someday our eyes will be opened to realize that we lived in the midst of miracles every day. Good night, and God bless.